Hi, this is Paul. This is my very first YouTube video, and I don't have a script, and I had some other notions about what this was going to be about. It had to do with nutrition and how it relates to weight loss and cardiovascular health. A couple of years ago, actually about 2.5 years ago, I found out that I had a faulty mitral valve in my heart, which means that the valve was not closing all the way, and it was therefore causing the blood flow in my body to be less than optimal. Um, I had gained a lot of weight over the last 30 years, and I avoided the scale like a lot of us do when we have that happen. And I had an incident where I was struggling to breathe all of a sudden, and I finally, after a couple of hours, asked my wife to take me to the emergency room. And that's when I, over the course of the next couple of next couple of weeks, found out about the diagnosis. And I wound up having surgery about 8 months later, and I had found a great surgeon in Orlando, and I'm grateful uh, that someone qualified was able to help me. It wasn't life-threatening, but the discussion was along the lines of, this is an optional surgery, but if you don't opt for it, you'll probably be shortening your life. So I was so scared when I got home from the ER that I didn't eat for 3 days, which I don't know if that ever happened in my life before. I was just terrified. And the last I had understood about my weight was that it was somewhere around 350 pounds, which is astounding because as much as I get tired of these stories, hearing them even in my own head, there was a time when I was in my 20s where I was quite fit. And, life takes its tolls and you make bad decisions. Um, and you get to a fork in the road. And so that fork led me into the medical system in a level that I hadn't encountered before. In order to get to the surgeon that I had researched as the guy that was my choice, I had to go get a cardiologist that was in that same company to refer me to him. And that was a result of him being that qualified. That was how they controlled who had access to him. And it's been an interesting journey over the last 2.5 years. When I came out of surgery, I was diagnosed with the possibility of atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heartbeat, only to realize that they took me off my medications going into the surgery, and then in the process of prescribing a new cocktail, as we call it, they neglected to put me back on potassium, which has a lot to do with the regularity of your heartbeat. And that was quite an eye-opener for me because they should have known that. And as soon as we got me back on the potassium, all that went away. But these supposed doctors still ask me, well, have you checked that out further? And, it's just overwhelming. So I went to YouTube and I started learning a lot. And I've read a little bit. I've read a couple of books. I've met one of the doctors who wrote one of the books that I read. But ultimately, everyone's going to take a different course to knowledge. And I had originally thought of this channel as a way of sharing what I've learned. And I don't want to pretend that I'm a doctor. And I don't have enough legal knowledge to know how to stay away from copyright issues as far as reposting other people's videos, because quite frankly, I'm grateful to the many people who I'll eventually share with you who they are, that I've learned a ton about everything that I'm going to talk about. But enough about my meandering, about the background. Initially, at least, this series of videos, this channel, is going to be about my journey to lose 100 pounds. So I'm now at 305 pounds without even knowing what I was doing. It really involved stumbling forward with my best effort to use a ketogenic diet. And I'm sure I'll talk about the stumbling part of that in more detail at some point. But today's July 1st of 2024, and I promised myself recently when I came up with this idea for the channel that the first video needed to be recorded on July 1st. I was at the gym yesterday. I'm currently going to the gym about 5 days a week. There's not a specific pattern, but I'm very mindful about it. And I've developed a routine where, because I have bad knees now, I use a recumbent stepper, which means I sit while I'm doing the stepping, and I gradually increase the resistance and change the way I do the steps. And I also use a leg press machine and a pull down machine where you hold a bar and pull the pulley down to raise the weights. And I don't want to make it overly complicated. I'm basically coming in at 2,000 steps a day at this point, and that takes me around 40 minutes. And then it takes about 5 to 10 minutes on each of the other two weight machines where I'm not using high weights. I set a goal to do 100 straight reps. That's it. A lot of reps, lower weights, being mindful to feel where the resistance creates, any pain or struggling. And, so I'm going to be sharing with you what I do each day, whether I'm taking a break from working out, which shouldn't really be more than one day in between sessions. You can go on and on about how often you should train, but this is something I'm comfortable with. So the goal is going to be able to continue at least to go every other day, at least. And I've recently been doing it for the last couple of weeks, about 5 times a week. And I got cushioning gel shots in my knees recently, and I had told my wife that that was going to be the point of no return for me, because if I got it approved by the insurance company, great. However it helps me, great. But if they're not going to approve it, it was the rubber hits the road moment for me where, okay, I tried everything I could to alleviate the pain in the knees, because, people say, well, just start walking. Well, if you're in pain from walking, it's really hard to use that as a remedy. And I'd gotten in the gym a few months ago when we first joined the gym, and I was too aggressive and I hurt myself again. So I'm a little more wizened at this point about how to control the rate at which I ramp up the workouts. But I'm going to talk to you about each day what I do, including what I eat. So far today, I've had a bowl of Gouda cheese with a few macadamia nuts in it, the shredded cheese, and a little bit of MCT oil. And these are all things we can talk about. If you are familiar with the ketogenic diet, those are food items that have various benefits related to that whole formulation. I'm not going to give you a big speech on it right now. But I'll also try to keep these videos to 10 or 15 minutes. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm watching the clock on the screen. I want these things to be able to be brief, so I'm not asking you to spend the whole day with me. And I think that if I post them more often and have them be shorter, it might have the potential to be of more help, not only to you, but to me. So here's the stated goal. As of yesterday, on the scale at the gym, 305 pounds. I actually thought I got a little lower than that recently. Well, I know I did. And then I did an indulgence over the weekend, which I haven't done a lot of. All I had was 2 light beers. And we'll talk about that again at another point, too. And I'm 99% sure that all that did was cause me to hold water. I've learned a lot about it's not just salt that pulls water into your body, it's alcohol. And there's a whole other related issue on that I learned from one of the docs that I've learned a ton from, that the reason you get drunk is that when you drink alcohol, when it goes into the brain, it pulls water into the brain, and that's the real reason you get drunk, is that there's pressure in your brain. Doesn't sound very healthy. In fact, if you list the symptoms of being drunk or having a hangover in particular, side by side with the symptoms of having a concussion, it looks in a lot of cases like the same list. Wow. So, I've surrounded myself digitally. I did go to Tampa to meet this one doc, which I'm grateful for. We'll talk about her in more detail as I develop the channel. But it's up to each of us to decide whether we just want to go along and die whenever we die. Like I said, I'm 64. I have a wonderful wife. I've known her for a long time. Uh, I've known her longer than we've been married. We both carved out different lives for ourselves after we met in college, and then we reunited about 15 years ago or so. And I don't want to leave her alone. And I make a lot of jokes about it, and I tell my son I'm not afraid of death, which I'm not. I'm very philosophical about things, and I've spent a lot of time in my life thinking about what all of that means. But that doesn't mean I just want to check out because I was too lazy to sort this out. So, 64, it's another chapter in my life. I'm beginning that chapter. I just turned 64 in June. Happy birthday to me. I'm not sure if I have a ton more that I need to say because I think I'm closing in on 8 or 10 minutes so far in this video. So I'm going to talk about everything in more detail each time we go along, and I might have more to say on some days than others. And it's going to be a conversation. It's not a two-way at this point, but I'm going to share my thoughts with you, and I hope that you find it of benefit. And we'll see what happens. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.